you can't understand a disease unless you understand it in its totality, which is why I have all of these little bullet points here. And I'm going to talk briefly about all of them, and we'll end on the one that you know the best. COVID-19 and the economy, a real thing, right? So, yeah, yesterday, they actually stopped trading on the stock exchange for 15 minutes. They put an off button for the entire stock exchange because people were selling so rapidly and things were dropping so fast. So this has a very real impact. And I'll go back to that thing that we said, that word panic, right? That panic is not helpful in a million ways, one of which is public health, another of which is economic. A component of that as well is that people sometimes don't get tested or treated because they don't have the money. At least in the United States, that's a real thing. So free testing has to be part of this component as well, right? There's an economic context to this. Also, hourly workers, what are you gonna do if you're sick, you have to go to work, or you don't get to pay rent? And so that tension is an economic component of COVID-19 as well. Italy just closed down their whole country. Yeah. And one of the ways that they're dealing with this is by saying that you can't collect rent or mortgages for the next however long. I know. And so, yeah. Yeah.
For 4 months, not collecting anything.
Beautiful. So, you can get around some of those economic stuff. There's also some sociology to understanding COVID-19. So in Iran, there are massive numbers of cases. Massive numbers of cases. And a good deal of that actually has to do with the societal context. So just before COVID-19 came out, the Iranian government accidentally shot down a plane that was flying out of Iran, and they lied about it for a while to the Iranian people. And when the Iranian people found out, they were really pissed, right? And then just a few months later, the government says, oh, you should stay at home. There's a bad virus out here. No one trusts that government. They think the government made it. They think the government is getting ill purpose. And so the public health impact of political stuff is seen in these case numbers. This isn't biology, this is sociology that got a bunch of those people sick. Then there's the psychological component as well. So we've seen, y'all have seen these movies, right? So I love these movies. I love horror movies in general, but yes. But I rewatched this one recently and was actually kind of pissed because it tells that same lie, that conspiratorial thing. Don't trust the government. This virus is the bad guy cooked up by the military-industrial complex, all of that. That's not safe information to be throwing out there. And so a lot of the stuff that's happening right now is psychological as opposed to microbiological. And people are paying the price. There have been a number of really high profile and probably underreported hate crimes against people perceived to be from East Asia. As though this is at all related to anything having to do with public health. I mean, frankly, these are racist attacks that have nothing to do with keeping people safe and healthy, right? And that's what happens when panic takes over. So those are the sociological, the big picture stuff. Public health-wise, what do you do when there's an epidemic? Well, you can do a quarantine. That's the most strict lockdown, right? They did that for Ebola, and when they did it for Ebola, it was very controversial because a lot of the people who were quarantined felt like they got locked into basically a holding pen with other people dying of hemorrhagic fever, right? So the ethics of quarantine are very complicated. So you can quarantine a place, you can also self-quarantine, like I really won't come out. And in New York, just today, a little section, I think it's New Rochelle, a little section of New York is going to be put under quarantine, but the National Guard will be delivering their food to them. So they'll be in their houses, the National Guard will drop off the food on the porch, and then they'll come out and get it once the National Guard is gone. So quarantine, Social distancing, you might have heard that phrase floating around. Social distancing really just means minimizing as much as possible the number of people you're exposed to, the number of people you're around, minimizing as much as possible. Social distancing. This is especially true for things like concerts with tens of thousands of people, right? Or conferences. I was going to go to a conference this weekend, and I think it's probably going to be canceled because they don't want such an incubator, a literal incubator of transmission. But I'm actually not worried about me for COVID-19. I'm not worried about my health and safety for COVID-19. I'm worried for the people who are socially or biologically more vulnerable. There are specific populations who are particularly vulnerable and who all public health measures should be geared towards prioritizing. And that's my argument to you all, and I hope that if it's convincing, you'll tell other people too. Who are these folks? People in refugee camps. People in refugee camps already underlying heavy levels of stress, potential illness, all of that, and then transmission would be immediate, and healthcare infrastructure is non-existent. Prisons, similar situation. In Iran, they let the prisoners out. They let the prisoners out because if you keep the prisoners in, they will pass it all to each other, and you can't physically treat all the sick people all at once. Elderly care facilities. These places are not only large numbers of people together, but also biologically vulnerable. And I'll show you in a little bit how stark the numbers are with respect to who actually gets sick, like sick, bad sick. So, vulnerable populations, and gearing everything up to be helping them, minimizing the impact on them. The Lancet, as of March 6th, keeps saying you don't need to close schools. You really don't need to close schools, that it's not particularly helpful. Yeah. Fulton County didn't listen today and may continue to not listen. And we'll see about GGC. Why is that? Again, it's the age question. It's the age question. So for something like influenza A, the pandemic flu, children were very susceptible both to transmission and to serious symptoms. Children gathering all in one spot is a bad idea. This one, not so much. Just a little bit on epidemic theory. So this is pronounced R0. That little sub-zero is not. And it expresses transmission potential. How likely is something going to be transmitted? And the reason why it's not just exactly the same as how virulent something is, or how contagious it is because there's actually a social component, right? A social component. And so if only, if only dogs get a disease, they're less likely to meet another dog to pass it on, right? So that would affect the transmission potential overall. How long someone stays infectious is a biological component of this, though. So the longer time you're infectious, the more likely it is that you pass something. But this is a broad picture guess. What's much more important for us is thinking about the effective R. And that involves assessing susceptibility of particular hosts. This is where we get to who should be nervous, who should be taking big precautions, and who should be thinking about helping those people take precautions. Is that X? Who is it? Well, odds are, if everybody in here got COVID-19 today, at this very moment, within 11 days, all of us would have started showing symptoms or be asymptomatic and kind of done with it. 80% of us would have a dry cough and a high fever. 14% of us would need to go to the hospital because we would need extra oxygen. We would have so much trouble breathing, we would need help getting enough air to ourselves. And around 5% of us would be in serious trouble, except not this particular crew because none of us are elderly or technically elderly or having underlying conditions. here's the juice. So, my parents are 75 and 76, and I'm not in good health. And so, even though I'm relatively cavalier about getting COVID-19 myself, I am not cavalier about passing it to them. I want them to be safe. I want them to be safe. One of the ways that I keep them safe, one of the ways that you keep the people you love safe, is by making sure that we don't overflow the healthcare infrastructure in the country, but everyone being sick at once. That's why we want to slow down the pace of infection, because we need people to get sick more evenly instead of all at once, right? If they get sick all at once, then our hospitals won't be able to help them. We need to have a plateau, slow down this spread. The spread, I believe, is inevitable, but pacing matters for outcomes, for people's outcomes.
Dr. Ward, I have a question. So it says that these numbers in bold are in percentage, but that doesn't equal the 100%. So where are the rest of the patients?
People who get it die. So here's the total percent.
Oh, okay. And this is the number of
That's
people
the
that
number
pass. Okay,
who die.
got it.
Total percent. And so yeah, I mean the mortality if you're over 80 is about 15%.
Okay.
But that also says that 85% of 85-year-olds still can get better. This is the infectivity. It is pretty infective, but not scary like measles. Here's one that you can get a vaccine to. There's a vaccine, there's a vaccine, there's a vaccine. There is a vaccine, but it's also eradicated. So the yellow dot here says if one sick person is sick, here's the odds that these other people, the orange, are going to catch it from them. So for each one person with COVID-19, about 2.5 other people catch it. That's worse than flu, although this is seasonal flu, not pandemic flu, which you should have in the back of your mind. And better than SARS, and crazy better than measles. Measles is highly contagious. So here's the testing gap that I spoke about earlier. The estimate of 1% fatality, comes from the idea that we haven't been testing enough asymptomatic folks, that we have an underestimate of how many people are actually just fine. But this is what we're looking at globally. And in the United States, a particular critique for us is that our death rate looks more like 10%, which is obscene, not possible. The reason is because we're not testing enough people who have mild symptoms. Yeah.
When you say we're not testing enough people that have milder symptoms, if they're not being tested, how do we know that they don't maybe have the flu or just have like another cold and that? Like how are we, you know what I'm saying?
The people who come into the hospital who are sick, we test them,
Right.
and we find they have COVID-19. The people who are not sick enough to come into the hospital, we haven't tested. So that means that of the percent of all the people who tested positive, a huge number of them are super sick.
But how do we know that the people that did come into the hospital, how can we include them in the estimate if we don't know that they have COVID-19 in the first place? Like how do we know they're not just allergies, like those are the mild symptoms?
We have to test them. Yeah, and we have to test people who are asymptomatic. Just broad public health testing to get a sense. Because they could have just allergies, or they could have nothing at all and still have COVID-19.
I think what maybe she's trying to ask is how do we get the estimate number of 1 without having done the testing?
Is that what?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
That right?
Because that's the amount that it would be if we tested a statistically significant component of the population.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a regression analysis, basically. If we did it right, it would look like this, we think. Yeah, good question. So, notice here, Ebola, incredibly dangerous disease, hemorrhagic fever, really dangerous, but not likely to ever cause an epidemic because it's not particularly infective. It doesn't spread very far. MERS, this is actually a sister of our COVID-19. This is a Middle Eastern respiratory virus, and here's SARS. We've met SARS before as well. And these guys are both much more deadly, and SARS is also much more infective than COVID-19. Here's the biology. Coronaviruses usually cause things like colds. COVID-19, they're not going to call what it causes a cold because it's severe respiratory disease. That said, coronaviruses often cause colds. What are colds? They're virally transmitted respiratory diseases that tend to cause high fever and a cough. High fever and a cough. This picture is a reminder of the complications of some colds. Pneumonia. Pneumonia is defined as inflammation of the lungs. There are kind of two flavors of inflammation of the lungs. There's typical and atypical. Typical has what are called infiltrates, consolidation. So liquid comes out of your alveoli and into your lungs. And that liquid is filled with white blood cells that are trying to fight things. That's the typical pneumonia. But atypical, you have no consolidation. Most colds, though, are caused by rhinoviruses and some by some other viruses. But here's our coronavirus. And you can see why it's called coronavirus. It's got these little spikes sticking up. And those spikes are like a crown. That's why they call it coronavirus. These 4 strains are the coronaviruses that cause the vast majority of colds. How do you treat a cold? Well, mostly you just wait till it goes away, right? Because usually it's not all that big a deal. You also develop immunity to the specific pathogen that gave you the cold in the first place if you just wait long enough. But there are antiviral drugs, and these drugs are being investigated for use with COVID-19. 2 big things for antiviral drugs. Number 1, nucleoside or nucleotide analogs. You might have heard of these from treatment for HIV, antiretroviral drugs. Because viruses, their polymerases make really bad copies, they're really sloppy, they sometimes are willing to take up a nucleoside analog, a broken piece of DNA. It doesn't work right. And so the virus will take it up, put it into a viral genome, but that genome's now a dud, right? And so it can make all the new viruses it wants, but all of them are going to be duds because they've got bad DNA. So that's a nucleoside analog. Another thing that is a common antiviral treatment is a protease inhibitor. Viruses often make their whole set of proteins as one big long polyprotein. And then they chop it into little pieces, into the functional units that go and do different things. Protease inhibitors are another thing that they're looking at as potential antiviral treatment. These are the 2 closest relatives that we have characterized well for COVID-19. So SARS and MERS. Both of these are zoonotic. What does that mean? It means that their reservoir is in something other than humans. It can pass to humans, but they live happy somewhere else. For SARS, it's bats, and for MERS, it's camels. So basically, these are camel colds, or bat colds that can transmit to humans. That's what these are. And the preliminary investigation suggests that about 90% of the genome of COVID-19 is homologous with bat coronaviruses. So it's quite possible that it had a bat reservoir back in the day. Features, about 5-day incubation period usually. If you're gonna show symptoms after exposure, you'll probably do it by 11 days. That's part of why they say the 14-day quarantine, right? Because if you don't, you're done if you don't show symptoms. And then mostly people who are contagious are symptomatic. And some of that is just transmission, right? Because it's transmitted through droplets. So if you're not sneezing, it's hard to transmit it to somebody. And some of that is also the viral production. So the viral life cycle means that it's bursting out of your cells and in the loose liquid that you're expelling during that time. Symptoms, I already did that one. The complication, kidney failure, I've got a slide for you about that in a second. Yeah, the gastrointestinal issues are very, very rare, but you see them occasionally with children. So, yeah, just a few more. Viral life cycle, bind, insert nucleic acid, replicate, release. We know this one. Coronavirus, you'll hear it described as a single-stranded plus-sense RNA genome. What does that mean? Single-stranded, we got that, it's just one. Plus-sense means that it's the same as the instructions for a protein. It's an mRNA. Minus sense is the backwards complement of plus sense. Why would we care to tell you about their genomes? Here's why. If you're a plus sense virus, your genome can go straight into that host cell and be turned into protein right away. If you're a minus sense, you have to actually transcribe your genome in order to get to the proteins. It takes longer. We have a nice picture of COVID-19 like this, so I used the MERS one, but the protein names, if not the content, are the same. Big deal here, the spike protein on the outside, this is where he binds to your epithelial cells. This is where he binds to your epithelial cells in your lungs. And then here are all of the open reading frames, ORFs. That just means a piece of expressed DNA. And we know the actual content of this particular one, and that's one of the things that's giving us such an edge in moving forward on vaccine. Pneumocytes. So these little guys, they line your alveoli, special cells that line your alveoli that help pull in and spit out CO2, right? It's your site of exchange. Well, that's where these guys like to bind. That's where the virus binds, and it can cause diffuse alveolar damage. What does that mean? It means your alveoli kind of disintegrate, basically. Like this was supposed to be contiguous, and now it's falling apart. So squishy lung. There's a specific spot that it likes to bind. ACE2, that's angiotensin converting enzyme 2. It's just on the outside of those pneumocytes. It's a protein that sits on the outside of those pneumocytes. Different versions do slightly different things of endocytosis versus fusion, but they get inside. They bind using that protein lock and key. They get inside the cell. Then they use us to make all of their proteins. They go to the endoplasmic reticulum and they grab our membrane, and then with the help of that end protein, they kind of pop out. They pop out. So that membrane comes from the last host it had, the endoplasmic reticulum. All right, what does this mean overall? Well, you don't need face masks unless they are N95 face masks. And these we should save for people who work in healthcare facilities, because there's actually a relative shortage of them, and we need to make sure that they have enough.
They took ours away.
They took yours away?
Yeah. I look in the OR, and we use those sometimes when we're doing like a public movement, like burning cancerous cells, whatever. And
Take them back.
people were stealing them, telling them to eat it. People
What?
were stealing them, telling them to eat it.
Shh. See, this is what I mean when I say panic. Panic making people not safe.
When we go to clinical, like, we're not allowed to have the N95 mask because we're younger. We save them for the nurses that are like over the age of 35.
I get that.
So we don't get them anymore.
Yeah. Gosh. Healthcare providers of all ages should have access to these. Those of us not in healthcare settings, make sure that we save them for the people who need it. For us, we should just wash our hands. This is the big one. Stay home if you're sick. If you need a GoFundMe to make rent, put it up. But stay home if you're sick, like for real, for real. I will donate to anyone's GoFundMe. But stay home when we're sick. We know these, right? We know these. This is the one that I think is really kind of important, right? Because it's not just biology that we're talking about here. We need people to have information that's accurate and that doesn't make the situation worse. And you don't need all that toilet paper. You can give it back. And really prioritizing those most vulnerable. So people in refugee camps, people in immigration detention facilities, people in prisons, homeless populations, and folks in elder care facilities. Those are the people that we need to start structuring everything to make sure make through this in time for us to get a good vaccine and get a good treatment.